I've been lucky enough to listen to hundreds of speakers and business experts over the years, and to be honest, some of them are a little overrated. But sometimes you listen to someone who really speaks wisdom and truth at a time when you're ready to hear it. Now, today's guest is one of those people. And today I'm interviewing James Schramko, who is a business coach based in Noosa and an expert in business on how to create a business and a life that really works for you.
If you've got a problem with everyone else, then you are the problem. In 95, I was selling BMWs. 23 years old, within a year I was number one in the whole country. Started thinking I really need to have my own business. Like, what am I supposed to do this till I'm 65 and then suddenly I stop work and now I've got money and I can enjoy the rest of what's left of my life? And I thought, that just doesn't make sense. I actually sold to multi-millionaires who were still working too hard. In fact, even a billionaire, and I see him on the news now and he's super overweight, very unhappy. He's on his third wife or whatever. If you have to flex and strut all the time to please someone else, you're kind of losing. Pleasing other people is not up there on the top 10 list. Time is money, but I would say time equals life.
Alrighty, here we are at the podcast. Tony Fraser-Jones, your host. We've got something a bit special today. I've ditched my good mate and co-host Phil Smith. I've upgraded and got a special guest on the podcast. Now my guest is James Schramko, who is a business coach and business expert based in Noosa. And I've had the pleasure of hearing James talk a number of times, and I've really loved his insights on business, creating a business and a life that works for you. And his talks have actually come at really important times in my business journey, at times where from the outside it looks like business is successful and we're making good money and things are going well. But actually on the inside, it's becoming a bit of a monster that's kind of consuming me and making me tired and stressed out. And I'm sure a lot of you listening have felt the same. So James, awesome to hang out today. Welcome. Appreciate you taking some time to come and share the gold with us today, man.
Yeah, I kind of owe it to Tradies in a way because they partly inspired some of my journey.
Awesome, man. So we caught up probably a couple of years ago. I'm at a business coaching event, I think, with Taki, and heard just your talk there. So it really inspired me. So I guess what I'd love to do is just kick off the discussion by helping the listeners understand why it's a good idea to listen to what you've got to say. So maybe just talk about how business and life looks like for you now.
So I work about 10 hours a week. I'm not quite down to the 4-hour work week as per Tim Ferriss, but neither is he, just quietly.
That's right. It's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. So I'm spending most of that time focusing on the highest impact activities, and I sort of measure that time as time when I'm not living my life. I'm just putting it on hold while I'm working on clients' stuff. So about 7 of those hours are mentoring or coaching, and then the other time is just dealing with a team or a few partners and creating podcasts or content like we're doing today. And I've got a little team who handles almost everything else, production of emails, bookkeeping, social media, etc. And I've spent a lot of time just doing family stuff. Like, maybe it'd be boring, but dropping my daughter to school, picking her up, going to school sports, after school sports, walking down to the beach. I surf most days if the waves are any good. Go to the gym a couple of times a week. I watch Netflix and read books and spend a lot of time with my wife. We eat out a fair bit during the week, go on lots of little lunch and dinner dates, and just do home stuff. I'm currently mid renovation. We're painting a door and looking for some pot plants to put somewhere around the garage planter box.
Nice. So can you talk us through your journey that's actually led you to where you are today? Because I know from talking before, it hasn't always been this way, and there's been some definite lessons along the way.
It definitely wasn't like this before. From about 1989, after I finished school, I did mixed jobs. So everything from working in a timber yard to had a lawn mowing round, and also worked in an accounting office on Fridays. In 1991, I got my first full-time job as a debt collector on the phone, chasing people up for payments. And I switched in 2 years later in 93 to Vodafone, and I was a regional administrator. So I was doing stock taking and supporting a sales team. And that was my first exposure to the sales team. And then I started building a family. So I needed to make a lot more money. In 95, I was selling BMWs. I got really good at it. I was 23 years old. Within a year, I was number one in the whole country. And then by 97, I switched across to Mercedes-Benz because I heard they pay better and you can have the occasional Sunday off.
Nice.
And within a year there, I was the top Mercedes-Benz salesperson in Australia, and worked my way through to sales management. So about 4 years later, I was a sales manager. And then I got promoted into general sales management roles. And then my last role was as a general manager. And that was from 2004 to 2008. But at about that time, like 2006, I started thinking I really need to have my own business, but I didn't really know what it would be. And I started teaching myself how to build a website and learning about affiliate marketing. And in 2008, that's when I left my general management role because I'd replaced my income with my online business. And from 2009 on, just been building out memberships, service agencies, and doing quite well with it.
And with the own business stuff, so that journey from when you went out on your own, like that hasn't been completely simple, has it? Because you've grown all sorts of things, tried a bunch of different things, had bigger businesses, moved things around. Can you talk us through a few of the steps or the key points in your journey there?
Key points were you have to commit to innovation if you have your own business. Whatever you're doing now, you can't guarantee you'll be working next year. So I always put a portion of my time and energy towards research and development. You do need to understand new technologies, new methods, new laws, and trends to be able to stay in front of it. I'm not saying like you don't have to be on the bleeding edge, but you've got to be close to it or you get caught out. Yep. I also fairly quickly discovered that I needed to build recurring income, that I don't want to be reliant on one-time income. I was actually so successful selling someone else's one-time income product that they couldn't fulfill and they went bankrupt, and then they didn't pay me my commission. So I ended up footing the bill on my Amex for all the ad spend.
Happy days.
So it's like, okay, I need to protect myself from this kind of situation. So recurring income, and also adjusting as my clients adjusted. Back then it was like, bring along your laptop, let's learn how to build a website. A few years later, I'm like, you shouldn't be learning how to build your website anymore. There's so many service providers now. We want to get better at the strategy and the big picture, and we want to hire technicians because there's so many people available for us to build a team around us or to get good service supply. And so I've grown up with my clients over the years, and in the last 8 or 9 years, I've actually partnered with several of them and gone into their business with them. And that's been like a huge innovation for me. So some of the core things haven't changed. I've had recurring subscription income from my membership since 2009. I've had recurring subscription income from my mentorship since 2010. I have been doing podcasting since 2009. I have logged in and answered questions pretty much every day for 15 years straight. Occasional day off where I'm flying or don't feel like it. But I've been really consistent in some areas, but I never got too far out of control. I mean, the biggest I grew my business was to about $3 million a year in revenue, and I had a team of 65 people, and we ran at about a 50% profit margin, and that went for about 7 years. But I sold that business, and then I sold another business that I'd built, and now my business is much smaller, small team, a lean offering, product range, and some of the clients I've had for almost that entire time. So consistent relationships has been key.
Yeah. So, if you're listening, you might be thinking, how does that relate to a tradie or a contracting business? And it's a good question. I think that's the reason why we're talking today is there's all sorts of ways that you can build a coaching business. I mean, our business is quite different to yours, and that's cool. And there's other varieties that you can do there. The thing that really is quite cool about what you've done is this concept that you talk about of creating your own racetrack. So can you talk us through what you mean by creating your own racetrack and why that's important and how that's a benefit as a business owner?
I think if you're an entrepreneur, you want to control as many elements of the game as possible. If you think about a scenario where you don't have much control, like let's say just take an employee role. or like you're an apprentice in someone else's business. If the business gets hit by a downturn, the apprentice is probably going to get booted. You don't have much control at all. Then you hear people saying stuff like, "Oh, it's the government, it's my boss," or whatever. But ultimately, if you're the entrepreneur, you get more control. So it's about controlling the key elements of your business rather than relying on other things, third-party things. So I decided I'm going to take responsibility for my future. I'm not going to blame the government. I'm not going to blame a boss. It's up to me. And things that you can control, for example, I still see trades roaming around with vans, and on the side of their van is like Fred at Hotmail. I'm like, well, you're not controlling even your own domain. Surely you could spend the $15 to get your own domain name and set up Google for Business email account for $5 a month or whatever it costs to have control of that domain. Because if Hotmail goes out of business, you lose all your email facility. So own your own domain, control your own email list. And I notice when I travel to the Philippines, for example, I notice a lot of businesses are set up on Facebook. They don't have their own website. I think that's insanity. At least if you ever want to sell your business or protect yourself from changes in platforms, host your own website. So having your own site, these are all things that apply directly to a trade business. And also things like multiple traffic sources. I know there are services out there where you can get leads as a trade, but if you're getting all your business from one place and that place changes hands or no longer provides it or doubles their rates, you're kind of stuck. So you can control your own marketing. You can control how people find you. You can control your own pricing. You can decide what sort of presence you want to have in your local community or nationally or internationally if you're that big. And those things are within your grasp. So it's how much you want to be committed to understanding and taking responsibility as to how much you can gain. But I actually speak to trades where they're never, ever looking for leads. Their biggest problem is just getting capacity to deliver on all the business they're being flooded with because they've developed really mature marketing systems.
Yeah, that's huge. And in your situation, I mean, you could, I guess what I find, and I've done it in some extent myself, and I've seen lots of our members do it, they can, climb the ladder of success, but they find that it's actually leaning against the wrong wall. It's not really something that they wanted. And what I really respect about what you've done is you've built a business to give you the life that you want. And in effect, that's the racetrack that you've created for yourself. So a lot of the people that we help, they feel out of control in terms of the outcome that they can generate. They feel like life is being done to them. Like you said, it's the government or whatever, or, insert excuse or whatever here. And not even excuse in a negative way. It just kind of feels like that. So what sort of advice would you have to those people listening who have a reasonable business, but it just feels like they're the one who's been bossed around rather than them doing the bossing and getting the life they want? What can they do from your experience to actually create a racetrack that they want to run on?
I'm thinking back to a memory I had at Mercedes-Benz. There was a estate manager called Bruce, and he observed that there was a significant difference between the very best salespeople and the worst ones. And I observed that too. In the dealership that I worked at, the first dealership that I worked at, there were 6 salespeople. And within 3 months of joining, I could sometimes outsell all the other salespeople myself. And I'm trying to figure out what's the difference here. We're in the exact same dealership. We have the exact same stock. We have the exact same manager. There has to be something different. There's got to be variables. So what Bruce used to say is he would say, write down every single excuse why you can't sell cars. Like, write it all down. He goes, now tear it up. And so I'd say, tear up your excuse list. This is not advice that I'm going to be popular for saying, but it's the hard truth. If you've got a problem with everyone else, then you are the problem. And so you have to own it. You've got to say, okay, I've got to stop blaming everyone else. I have to take control. And I mean, I even experienced this even with family members who have not put in the same work that I have into personal development and reading and learning and understanding and reflecting upon this. but they're so quick to blame other things, and like the Labor government, or a certain particular politician who put in a law. Why do some people thrive at the same time as you're having difficulty? And I'll certainly say there's a huge degree of luck, and not enough people acknowledge luck as a force. There's certainly a lot of luck involved, but if you keep generating positive efforts towards being lucky, you'll increase your luck surface area. I'm not exactly sure who coined that, but it's something I know to be true. If you keep working and taking responsibility and doing the right things, eventually you win. And if you know anyone who's doing better than you and it wasn't all just luck, then there has to be other factors. So take back control, decide you want to own your own destiny, stop doing the bad habits that you know are costing you. And I know there's a running joke in my suburb here that some particular trades are known for drinking a lot of alcohol, right? Like if you're in with the wrong crew or doing the wrong things, stop doing that and work towards doing actions that will get you further. So if you want practical things, make sure you are on top of what is it that's making the most successful people in your industry successful, and how can you learn from that? What clues do they leave you? I'm dealing with a tradesperson right now who has observed a competitor do something really clever in his market, and he also wants to do the same thing. And that's quite smart. I'm not saying cut and paste, but I'm saying there are often clues left. And it's the same in my industry or any industry. Remember W. Edwards Deming went to Japan and helped them rebuild after the war and brought in process optimization and helped manufacturing, and Toyota became a superpower. So yeah, it's time for personal review, personal responsibility, and setting a clear objective as to what you want to get out of your life, and not compromising on things that will delay that or get in the way of it. And you can anticipate a lot of the things that will compromise it.
For sure. This probably is related to that. A big thing is business owners get stuck in their own heads. They get apprehensive, or perhaps they lack belief or fear, or all that goes on in people's heads. So in your experience, how does that kind of mental game stop people, and what can they actually do to push through that?
They can switch on God mode. Like almost every visionary or famous person you care to mention, you'll get references to their reality distortion. Like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk,
Yep.
Walt Disney, Colonel Sanders, Henry Ford. And I'm not saying any of us are that brilliant. None of us are, probably. But they do switch into a self-belief mode. There's something I learned interesting about when I was studying all different religions is that a belief system can still be effective even if there's no actual scientific basis for it. If you believe it, it could be true. Like if you convinced yourself that red is blue, if you push that notion enough, you'll probably end up convincing yourself that it's true. When I started selling cars, I was listening to Brian Tracy, Psychology of Selling, and he said, repeat this mantra, I am the best. So I'm 23 years old with no sales experience to speak of other than debt collection. And I'd go out in the morning and all the lazy salespeople wouldn't even open up the cars every day. And I'd grab this heavy keyboard and walk around the lot and open up every car. This is before remote control. And I'd put the key in the door, turn it and say, I am the best. And I would program myself that I am the best to the point where I'd actually believe it. So you basically can turn on this reality distortion and say, you know what, I'm actually good at this. I've got runs on the board. I've done good jobs. I am good. And I can charge for my services and people will pay it. And as one of my sales managers used to say, let's not do the objections on behalf of the client. Let's have them say it and then we'll deal with it. Because I'd have salespeople wanting to pre-discount a car before they even ask the customer to buy. And then we'd wait, and sometimes the customer wouldn't ask for a discount and they'd be happy to pay the normal price. So I think we can, I do think mindset's absolutely critical, and I think we can put our own reality distortion mode on and believe in ourselves, because the odds of you being an entrepreneur are already quite slim. It's only a small percentage of the world that can do it. And you have put runs on the board by the stage that you're listening to podcasts like this. Just go out and be bold and confident in your success. If you arm yourself with some logic as well, like go and find out what the best operators are using in terms of their tool set, their software systems, their payrolls, etc. Decide that there are going to be failures and risks in any worthwhile pursuit, and accept them. Focus on the longer term. Like look for hiring people who you could have with you for 5 or 10 years from now. Go and deal with clients who aren't dickheads that you would like to work with. Quote prices where you're happy to show up and do amazing work instead of begrudge them because you undercut someone. I think these are all the practical insights that a tradie could actually do.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I really respect the way you do things that you enjoy in life, and that's certainly inspiring for me, and I think I could probably do better with that. Sometimes I have excuses like too many kids to look after, etc., but I think they are excuses. So how important it has been for you to actually put things into your life that you love doing, like surfing and all that sort of stuff, and how does that actually help you both personally and probably for business as well?
I mean, it is life-changing. I remember driving to a client appointment in my white shirt and tie in my Mercedes-Benz, and I looked out the window and I was somewhere near Hawkesbury in Sydney, and I saw a tradie ute with dirt bikes in the back and a jet ski on a trailer. And I remember thinking, how have I got this so wrong? That guy is living. I'm not. Like, what am I supposed to do this till I'm 65 and then suddenly I stop work and now I've got money and I can enjoy the rest of what's left of my life? And I'm like, that just doesn't make sense. So it's no underestimation when I say that surfing completely changed my life, because culturally it's got a lot of lessons. You have to do the work. There is no real shortcut. I mean, like, you're not going to get towed in on a jet ski every time. You have to build resilience. You have to push through pain. You will get injured. It is physically demanding. It's mentally challenging. It's especially hard to take up surfing when you're 42.
Yeah.
I did a survey recently on my surfing YouTube channel, and almost everyone had already been surfing before they're like 20. A lot of them before they're 10 in Australia in particular. So it taught me so many lessons, and it put me back into beginner mindset. It's like, okay, hot shot. You've got financial wealth, you've got time wealth, but you basically surf like a kook. And it was like so humbling, and it helped me relate better to beginner clients, of which I generally don't deal with beginners, just as a side note. But when I do, it really helps me relate to how much the struggle is real for them. And I had to push through that. And we're 11 years into it now. And I've got to the point where I'm basically an authority in some aspects of it for other people and helping them, guide them through it. And it's not something I do, it's who I am. And when tradies come to my house to work on something, they look at my surfboard quiver and they say, do you rent these out? I'm like, no, mate, I just surf them. They're like, oh. But, I really owe it to the tradie in the first place, because they were the ones showing me that you can go for a jet ski after 3 o'clock in the afternoon or whip out that motorbike, because I was delaying and I was deferring. And the other thing that's critical is, as you go through milestones, it's probably important to recalibrate. In my 20s, I just needed to make money. I've got 5 kids, so I can relate to the whole doing it for the kids thing, but we're not really generally. We can use that as an excuse. I needed to make money. I'd chosen to live in a very expensive place, Sydney, and I put my nose to the grindstone and I worked really, really hard. But I do see I actually sold to multi-millionaires who were still working too hard. In fact, even a billionaire, and I see him on the news now and he's super overweight, very unhappy. He's on his 3rd wife or whatever. And he's still stuck in the grind. And I don't know what his joy factor would be, but it doesn't look very high. It would all be quite shallow. So for me, I think realigning to what's important, it changes from money to something else. And as I'm in my 50s now, health is absolutely a priority. Eating, moving, mobility, uh, pulse rate, sleeping, all that stuff is like critical. And I'm really enjoying that phase and letting the pressure off. Having an extra $10 million wouldn't really change my life anymore, but I can't get the time back with family. And I do want to live longer and healthier than what I might have if I'd gone down the old path.
It's and as we're saying, I'm similar age. I think as you're younger, and if you're listening, you probably, it's probably difficult to see this. I don't want to sound like an old coot, but the getting set up financially is important. But there is a point past which that does very little for your enjoyment of life. In fact, it doesn't do anything. And the things on the outside don't actually make you any happier and any more peaceful. It's actually stuff that you nurture on the inside, which sounds a bit woo-woo, but it's flipping true.
Well, I can relate to that. When you're young, you don't care about that.
Yeah, you don't.
It means nothing. So, like all this other talk about creating legacy or giving back or charity and all that stuff, it means nothing when you're young trying to earn money. I get it. And you need to go through it to some extent. I used to blow money on burning out my tires and drinking alcohol and all the things. And then I had things I needed to have. I needed to have a Rolex, and because I was chasing significance, and a large degree was competition and ego and all the stuff that young men go through. I get it. I don't need it anymore. I stopped wearing my Rolex. I don't need to show anyone how amazing I am or get people to give me praise. I don't seek it. I don't speak anymore unless someone comes to Noosa and I've known them for a decade and they ask me to. I've stopped doing anything to seek external validation. And it is true to some extent that things own you. If you have to flex and strut all the time to please someone else, you're kind of losing, I think. Once you've reached a point where you can afford your meals without looking at the bill, you can travel whenever or wherever you want, you've got money working for you instead of you working for money, then the extra part, that's the part where I actually still don't really get why some people go beyond that. And I think they're still trying to please mum or dad, or they've got some kind of desire to be accepted that they haven't met yet. And I'm not a super specialist on that, but it does seem to be a driver. And one of the most humble people that I've ever met has sold his business for over $500 million. I've coached him for about 12 years. He never did it for the money. He was only making great product because it really excited him. And by the end of it, he was finished. He was ready to sell it and move on to family stuff, right? So I think everyone's drive is different, but I've recognized my motivations change significantly as I age, because I was super competitive as a younger person, hyper competitive, had to win. And now I don't care at all. I'd rather collaborate. I lift up my students. I don't seek fame. And it does sound weird when I'm saying these things. The younger me wouldn't believe that I would say these things, but you do get to that point.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to chat today, is that you can build something that really works for what you want, and part of the process there is to actually think meaningfully and deeply about what you actually do want. Because I've done it. I've seen lots of our members do it, and I'm sure you've seen people do it. Because most people listening to this are motivated self-starters, the entrepreneurial types. They've got some get up and go. You can actually build a lot of stuff, and you can actually build something that in the end is not really something that's going to give you the life that you want, and you're actually running in someone else's race. You're in their racetrack, not your own racetrack. And really, I guess the purpose of today, and what I really appreciate you sharing, is that just to take a moment to actually think about the fact that I can build what I want here, and it can be a $20 million business, it can be a $50 million plumbing business if you want, or it could be a $5 million plumbing business, or whatever it is. and you can be, running it every day full on if that really lights your fire, and that's fine. Some people love that. Or you may choose to have a really strong management team, a general manager, a board, who actually do the heavy lifting, and you're more of a passive type, an investor. All of those things are possible, but it all starts with, as you said, figuring out what you want and designing a racetrack to give you what you want, rather than stumbling through life feeling like it's being done to you, which I think is the experience of the vast majority of certainly our members and probably most business owners.
I mean, I used to run a dealership, and we had a self-development lady come and talk to us about this, and there was a mechanic there. They call them technicians now. And he was in his 60s, and he just burst into tears. And he said, I never realised I had a choice. I was an apprentice when I was 16. I kept coming to work, and here I am in my 60s. I never even thought that there could be some other option. I didn't even give it a thought that I could do whatever I want. I just went along with it from 16 and never even looked back. And it's I could see this regret and remorse and sadness that had wafted over him.
Yeah.
And like my mentor taught me to imagine you're at the central station and think about which platform you're going to get on. Where do you want the train to go? And when you get there and you get off the train, are you going to be happy? And so I'll knock down things before I even build it, by using a spreadsheet or some research. Like if you wanted to build out a 50-person contractor business and have all the vans and own the suburb, whatever, like imagine it in your mind, vision it really strongly, and think about what it's like. Are you going to have fierce competitors trying to vandalize you? Are you going to have government lobbyists hating on you because you're clogging up their sidewalks? Are you going to have a competitor from school be jealous about you and slag you off on Google reviews? Like with anything you add, you got to look at the yin yang. It's going to be a positive and a negative. And I do see people build too big or go too far and then think, oh, that's actually I'm not happy now. It's too much of a responsibility. I can't ever go away. I can't sleep properly at night because one of my workers is out there on the road. I actually saw this with my dad. He used to run a bulk haulage division for a transport company. Sometimes he'd get up at 3 a.m. because a driver had run off the road or something. Like it was an omnipresent thought. Same when I was running the dealership. If the fire alarm went off or whatever, I'm going to have to go down there whatever time because I'm responsible. And so I've deliberately kept my business a little smaller now than a lot of my peers. But when I see them, man, they look stressed out and they're clearly consumed with big challenges. And I choose the level of fight you want to enter. You don't all have to go for the black belt. I'm happy just to get by and have a decent little thing. And I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I'm saying it's really worth sitting down and assessing where you're at and where you'd like to be and make some adjustments. Like a couple of practical things that I'd be considering are, how do you want your online footprint? How do you want your marketing to work? Who do you want servicing the clients? Is it you or someone else? Do you want to go chasing clients all the time, or do you want to set up recurring packages and retainers and bring in revenue? Do you want to have marketing materials working for you instead of you having to knock on doors? What kind of tools or management systems do you want to use to streamline things? Are you going to incorporate new technology, which is obviously going to make a massive disruption, especially in the next year? Are you thinking about it now, or are you going to get sideswiped by it next year? These things are probably critical at this point.
Yeah. I think a theme sitting under a lot of that, James, which is really quite powerful, is you build what you want, or sometimes you build what your ego wants you to build, what you think is required or what you think will make you happy. And I think what your message there is, get really clear on the difference. They might be the same, but they're probably not. And so get clear on the one that's really going to suit your life. And I think that's the key message, because we do have the choice. We're not employees. So we actually can create our own racetrack, which is flippin' exciting. And I'm unemployable now, flippin' heck, for that very reason, because I like to have control of my own environment. So I really appreciate those shares, man. as we finish up, is there anything else that we haven't chatted about today that you think would be useful that we should have?
I think this is for everybody in any role, anywhere in life, business, home, whatever. All things aren't equal. I really think I was excited to learn about the 80-20, and then I was even more excited to figure out that it applies to itself. And I got down to this sort of 64-4 ratio, that almost 2/3 of your outputs are coming from 4% of your inputs. So if I was a tradie, I'd be thinking about which products or services are your highest performing ones, which of your clients are the best type of clients, and which are the worst. And I'd be dialing them. If you move the needle to the best clients with the best products, with the best team members, you don't need a lot to get a massive result out of that. And that's where I think the leverage can come. And everyone's got access to this. And I have not yet found a limit to the leverage. Each year that my business goes on, I can find a little bit more leverage. My team are a little bit more experienced. I know my clients a little bit better. I know myself better. And I adjust to the market as it comes through, and we recalibrate, and we're usually much faster to it because we're just thinking about these things. How can you remove things out of your life or workflow that are not important? And for me, pleasing other people is not up there on the top 10 list. And that's taken a huge amount of pressure off of the reason for doing things.
Yeah, that's a mic drop moment, and I think that's hugely important for if you're listening to this podcast, because most of us getting in contracting businesses or trading businesses do it because we like to help people, and sometimes we forget that the most important person is to help is ourselves first, because if you don't do that, you can't help anyone else in the long term.
Yeah, like at the top of the podcast, we heard that time is money, but I would say time equals life. When you're out of time, you're out of life. And if you were to quantify your best guess at how much time is left in your life, you can say, well, I'm going to move in a certain direction to get certain life out of that time. And I believe you can have intent and make deliberate moves towards making that even better than what it might have been if you didn't think about it.
100%. Man, this has been gold. I super appreciate your insights and your wisdom and your hard-won lessons, and appreciate you sharing with them, man. And excited to see where you take things in the future as well.
Yeah, too. And I want to express my gratitude for whoever that tradie was in Hawkesbury all those years ago with the dirt bikes and the jet ski to inform my lifestyle decisions.
That's killer, man. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Tony.
Congratulations on being part of a select group of savvy business owners who are taking their businesses to the next level. And to help you on your journey, don't forget to check out our show notes for a copy of our free book, The Profitable Tradie, and other valuable resources. Thanks for being a part of this special group, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Profitable Tradie podcast.